Welcome along to tonight's coaching call. Today's topic is strength training, men versus women. What's different, what's the same, and how each should train. So what's different? Tonight we're looking at whether men and women actually need to strength train differently. There's plenty of information out there telling us that women need one type of strength training and men need another. But when we look at the physiology and the research, the answer is a little more nuanced. There's genuine physiological differences between men and women that we need to understand, but there are also some fundamental principles of strength training that don't change. So we're going to look at what's the same, what genuinely is different, and most importantly, what that means for how you should actually train. First things first, we're more similar than different. The most important place to start is that basic mechanism for getting stronger is the same for both men and women. We expose the muscles to an appropriate training stimulus, allow the body to recover and adapt, and then progressively increase that stimulus over time. Women don't need special women's exercises, and men don't need special men's exercises. A squat is a squat. A deadlift is a deadlift. Both men and women benefit from appropriately heavy resistance training, and both should generally build their programs around good quality compound movements. Where we start seeing differences isn't really in how muscle gets stronger, it's in the physiological environment surrounding that training. And that's what we're going to look at next. So the differences that actually matter, there are some obvious differences. On average, men have more muscle mass and considerably greater absolute strength, particularly through the upper body. Testosterone is an important contributor to that. But there's an important distinction. Absolute strength isn't the same thing as the ability to improve strength. When men and women undertake similar resistance training programs, the relative improvements in strength and muscle size can actually be remarkably similar. There are also some interesting differences in fatigue. Women often demonstrate greater resistance to fatigue during repeated muscular contractions and may recover between efforts relatively well. Hormones also influence muscle, connective tissue, bone, metabolism, and recovery. But there's enormous variation within each sex as well. So we shouldn't look at someone and say, you're female, therefore you need this program. We're still trying to coach the individual. Do women need to train around their menstrual cycle? This is an area where there's been a lot of attention and unfortunately quite a lot of oversimplification. You've probably seen recommendations saying women should train hard during one phase of their menstrual cycle and reduce their training during another. The current research doesn't give us enough evidence to prescribe strength training rigidly according to the menstrual cycle phase. Even Dr. Stacey Sims, who's been one of the strongest advocates for recognizing female physiology and training, has moved away from the rigid calendar-based recommendation. What matters much more is an individual woman's response. If someone consistently experiences significant fatigue, cramping, poor sleep, or reduced performance at a particular point in her cycle, that's useful information that we can adjust accordingly. But we shouldn't automatically reduce someone's training simply because an app tells us which day of her cycle she's on. Track the athlete, not just the calendar. Age changes the equation. Age is where some of the differences between men and women become increasingly important. Both men and women gradually lose muscle mass, strength, and particularly power as they get older, if we don't actively train to maintain them. Men generally experience a relatively gradual hormonal change with aging. For women, menopause creates a much more pronounced change in the hormonal environment, particularly through declining estrogen. That's implications not just for muscle, but also for bone. This is one of the areas Dr. Stacey Sims emphasizes strongly. As women approach and move through menopause, the answer isn't necessarily to make their training easier. There is actually a very strong argument for making high quality strength training increasingly important. And the same broad principles apply to aging men. We shouldn't think, I'm getting older, therefore I should stop lifting heavy things. We should be thinking, I'm getting older, therefore maintaining my ability to lift heavy things is becoming increasingly important. Don't just get strong, train for power. There's another important distinction here. Strength and power aren't the same thing. Strength is our ability to produce force. Power is our ability to produce that force quickly. We tend to lose power faster than we lose strength as we age, which is important both for sporting performance and everyday life. For runners and triathletes, every stride involves producing force quickly. It's no good having lots of strength if we can't express that strength rapidly enough to contribute to performance. Power training doesn't have to mean complicated Olympic lifting. It could involve jumps, hops, medicine ball throws, kettlebell swings, or performing an appropriate resistance exercise explosively. The important thing is quality rather than fatigue. We're generally talking about a small number of explosive repetitions performed while fresh, not turning it into another endurance workout. So how should men and women strength train? After talking about all these differences, we come back to something surprisingly simple. Men and women don't necessarily need dramatically different strength programs. Both should lift sufficiently heavy or heavily to stimulate strength development. Both should use good quality compound movements. Both should progressively increase the training stimulus, and both should include some form of power development when appropriate. What changes is how we apply those principles to the individual. A younger athlete learning to strength train might need quite a different program from an experienced 55-year-old athlete. But that difference isn't simply because one is male or female. For women around and beyond menopause, we may place particular importance on maintaining heavy resistance training, power, and appropriate impact loading for bone health. But remember, these things aren't bad for men. Men benefit from them as well. So don't program according to stereotypes. Start with the training principle, then modify it for the athlete in front of you. The principles that matter the most. So if you remember nothing else from tonight, remember these principles. Firstly, train the individual, not simply their sex. Secondly, if the objective is to become stronger, the resistance eventually needs to be challenging enough to stimulate strength. Doing endless repetitions with a very light weight isn't necessarily strength training. Thirdly, progressive overload. You don't need to add weight every session, but over time, the training stimulus needs to progress as you adapt. Fourthly, you don't just think about strength, maintain power as well, particularly as you get older. And finally, training is only a stimulus. You need sufficient nutrition, protein, energy, and recovery to actually adapt to it. The physiology of men and women isn't identical, but the fundamental recipe for becoming stronger is remarkably similar. Apply an appropriate stimulus, recover from it, adapt, then progressively challenge the body again. That's ultimately how both men and women should strength train. Kia ora, Chloe. Welcome. I saw you jump in there after we'd started. Any questions? Jason, you were there first. We'll open things up to you. No questions? Harrison, you're next cab off the rank.
No, I don't have any questions.
We'll move right along to you, Chloe, and I know you missed the first portion. Any questions? And there'll
Yeah,
be
sorry I was late.
no, that's all right.
Um,
There'll be a replay
yeah.
available on YouTube later anyway.
Oh, sweet. I might catch the start of that then. But yeah, no questions. Thank you.
All right, we'll open things up to general questions about any exercise, training, racing type topics. Anything you want to discuss, Jason? Harrison?
No, I haven't got any questions. I think I'm all good for my training this coming week.
Perfect. And moving on to you then, Chloe.
Um, Not really. I might try and organise a catch up with you in the next few weeks.
Yeah, you've got the
Um,
booking link?
yeah, yeah,
Yep. Just book a
yeah.
time that's convenient for you.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. Well, any final questions before I wrap things up fully? All right. Ka kite anō. Have a fantastic week, everyone. And I look forward to catching you in the next coaching call or on a one-on-one call in the near future.
Thank you.
Ngā mihi, ka kite.